You ever wake up and feel like you're the only one who noticed something shift? We were a few hours into the Mojave when the cell signals disappeared. It was me, Kyle, and Reed. 3 guys in our 30s pretending we could still camp like teenagers. The plan was simple: no phones, no wives, no obligations, just sand, silence, and whiskey. We parked near the sandstone arch that looked like a screaming mouth and pitched our tents in a triangle. I remember thinking the layout was clean, geometrically perfect, like it mattered. We drank, told stories we told a dozen times before, and eventually, one by one, retreated to our tents. Sometime around 2 a.m. I woke up. I had to piss. The desert was dead still. No wind. No sound. Like the whole world was waiting for something. That's when I noticed the 4th tent. It was maybe 8 feet from mine, perfectly placed to break the triangle. Like someone had jammed a puzzle piece where it didn't belong. At first, I thought maybe I'd just forgotten one of us brought a backup or something. But no, this one was different. It looked identical to Reed's, same model, same reflective strips, but newer. Clean. No sand on the stakes, no wrinkles on the flysheet. And we'd been here all day. I scanned the camp. My tent, Reed's tent, Kyle's tent, this one was extra. I knew it wasn't there before. I knew. I helped set them up. But the others? They didn't seem concerned. I whispered toward Reed's tent. "Hey! You awake?" Nothing. I stepped closer to the strange tent, bare feet sinking into cool sand. No flashlight, just moonlight and the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. I knelt, not daring to touch the fabric, and whispered, "Kyle?" No answer. I called his name a little louder. Still nothing. The zipper moved. Just a couple inches from the inside. A faint rasp, like someone slow rolling it open to peek out. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my palms. The flap moved slightly. Just enough for a hand to appear. It wasn't Kyle's hand. It wasn't Reed's. It was too clean. No dirt, no sunburn, no calluses. It looked sterile. Like a mannequin's hand. It gripped the edge of the flap. Didn't move. Didn't gesture. Just held it open. I didn't wait. I backed away slowly, then turned and walked to the dying campfire and sat down. I didn't want to look away from the tent, but I didn't want to keep staring either. I just sat there, knees pulled to my chest, listening to the silence scream. The tent never moved again. By the time the sun came up, I was stiff and cold. The desert can drop 30 degrees at night, but I barely felt it. I just kept watching that tent. It was still there. Still zipped shut. When Kyle finally emerged from his own tent, rubbing sleep from his eyes, I asked the only question that made sense. "Who set up the 4th tent?" He looked at me like I was insane. "What 4th tent?" I pointed, and my breath caught in my throat. There were only 3. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at the spot where the 4th tent had been. A smooth, undisturbed patch of sand. No stakes. No prints. Just the morning light spilling across emptiness like the desert had ironed it flat while I wasn't looking. "You good?" Kyle asked, stretching. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Yeah," I said, voice dry. Did either of you get up last night? Move your tents or anything?" Reed came over, squinting. "Move our tents? What?" "There was a 4th tent," I said. "Right there. I saw it. I went up to it." Kyle laughed. "How much bourbon did you drink?" "Enough to sleep like shit. Not enough to hallucinate a tent." I waited. "You guys seriously didn't see it?" They both stared at me like I'd grown another head. We packed up late. I kept scanning the horizon, expecting to see someone approaching, some explanation walking in from the dunes. Nothing ever did. Back home, I tried to shake it off. Just a dream, I told myself. Stress. Maybe I was finally cracking under everything. The fights with Marissa, the job loss I hadn't told anyone about. Maybe my brain just made something up. That would have been easier to believe, If the dream hadn't come back. It wasn't the desert. In the dream, I was back in my bedroom. Only it wasn't quite mine. It looked the same, but things were wrong. The dresser had different knobs. The ceiling fan didn't have dust on it. And there, in the corner of my room, was a tent. A perfect, pristine camping tent, pitched directly on the hardwood floor. Same model. Same reflective strips. Zipped shut. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. I moved closer. I reached for the zipper, hand trembling. Just as I touched the metal tab, something moved inside, quick and hard, like an animal lunging against fabric. I woke up soaked in sweat. That was 2 nights ago. Last night, it was worse. I didn't even fall asleep this time. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone to avoid the dark, when I heard the sound, faint, almost imperceptible. A zipper. Coming from the living room. I didn't want to go. I stayed frozen for almost an hour, until I convinced myself it was just noise from the street, or from the neighbors. But when I finally worked up the courage to check, I found it. The tent. In my living room. Identical in every way. Except now, the flap was open. Inside I found one item, a photograph. Same as before. Me, age 6. Only this time, I wasn't sitting on a stranger's lap. I was standing. Alone. And behind me, barely visible in the far background, was the tent. Smaller, further away, but unmistakably the same. I don't know how to explain this. I haven't told anyone. Haven't left the apartment. The tent is gone now, like it never existed. But I've checked every corner. Every closet. And sometimes, at night, I swear I can still hear it. The faint, deliberate zip of something opening. Not in the dream. Not in the past. Here. Now. I think I brought something back from the desert. Or maybe it followed me. The man who picked me up outside Barstow called it the dry place. He didn't mean the desert. He meant a stretch of nowhere so far from nowhere that maps just didn't bother. I was hitchhiking through California, chasing nothing, carrying everything I owned in a backpack that weighed more than my reasons for carrying it. The driver was in his 60s, long beard, nicotine voice. Said his name was Merrick. Told me he used to come out here as a kid, before they closed off the old access roads. Wasn't always this dry, he said, eyes fixed on the vanishing point. Used to be springs. Little green pockets between the red. I nodded, mostly pretending to listen. The heat made the air shimmer. We passed a faded sign that said NO's services next 88 miles. An hour later, Merrick pulled off the road without warning. Just veered into the open sand like the car didn't need roads anymore. I asked him where we were going. He grinned like he knew something I didn't. Thought you might want to see the old campground, he said. The van bumped along an invisible path until it stopped near a series of crumbling fire rings and the warped skeleton of a picnic table. No signs. No people. Just this dead flat stretch of orange dirt, cracked open like a scabbed wound. Merrick pointed to a patch of packed earth. Used to be a spring right there. Coldest damn water I ever tasted. I got out, legs aching. The air didn't move. Not even a breeze. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums like altitude. Mind if I crash here for the night? I asked. He gave me a long look. Then shrugged. Don't dig, he said. I blinked. What? His eyes narrowed. If you're gonna camp, don't dig into the dirt. Just trust me on that. Then he turned, got in the truck, and drove off without another word. I didn't know what to make of it, but I was too tired to care. I set up my little tarp tent, laid out my sleeping mat, and let the silence creep over me like a slow fog. That night, the stars were impossibly sharp. The sky looked punched full of holes. I lay there staring up, trying to remember the last time I'd felt still. Somewhere around 1 a.m. I heard it. A thud. Not loud, but weighty. A footstep. Then another. Crunching dirt. I sat up. No wind. No animals. Just that steady rhythm. Step. Step. I reached for my flashlight. Clicked it on. No one. But the sound didn't stop. It just circled. Slow and wide. Like someone was pacing the edge of my camp, staying just out of the beam. I called out, "Hello?" But the pacing didn't change. That's when I saw it. Near the fire ring, the ground was sinking. Not fast. Just a gradual, deliberate collapse. The crust of dirt sagged and like something underneath had exhaled. Then a split. A narrow crack. Like lips parting. A trickle of dust spilled out. And something inside moved. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. That crack in the dirt had widened by an inch, maybe two. Just enough for the desert to whisper. Not the wind, there was no wind. This was something else. A low hiss, like steam bleeding through stone. My flashlight flickered, and the batteries were fresh. The footsteps had stopped. I scanned the horizon. Empty. No movement. But the sense of being watched pressed on me like a physical weight. My fingers went numb. Every part of me screamed to run, but I stayed, crouched by my tarp, heart throbbing in my throat. Then I made the mistake of looking into the crack. It was deep. Much deeper than it had any right to be. The beam of my flashlight vanished into it like it was swallowed. And just before I looked away, I saw the edge of something pale. Not rock. Not dirt. Something rounded, like the curve of a skull. That was enough. I backed away, grabbing my pack, stumbling over my own legs. I didn't stop until I'd cleared 50 feet. The silence followed me like a shadow. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. At dawn I looked back. The crack was gone. Not covered. Not filled in. Gone. The fire ring looked untouched. The ground where I'd seen it collapse was smooth, undisturbed. Like it had never happened. I packed up without breakfast. Didn't care about leaving anything behind. My only goal was getting back to the highway. But the road was further than I remembered. It should have taken me 20 minutes. I walked for an hour. 2. No tire tracks. No sign of Merrick's van. Nothing but the hum of heat and sand stretching to the ends of the earth. I wasn't lost, I had a compass. But every direction looked the same. Flat, hostile and empty. That night, I made a fire from what little brush I found. Not for warmth. Just so there'd be light. The feeling of being watched hadn't faded. If anything, it had gotten worse. And sometime after midnight the crack came back. It didn't open slowly this time. It was just there, maybe 20 feet from me. Gaping wider now, a long ragged mouth in the dirt. I didn't look inside. I didn't need to. The smell alone told me everything, damp rot like old wounds. Then the whispers started. Dozens of voices, layered, overlapping. All speaking in tones just under my hearing. Too soft to understand, too loud to ignore. And underneath it all, something else. Breathing. I backed away slowly, but no matter where I moved, the crack stayed the same distance away. Like the horizon, it retreated with me. I finally ran. I don't know how long. I don't know where I ended up. I woke up with sunburn on my hands and blood in my shoes. I was lying just off the road. Some gas station I don't remember ever passing. A guy in a pickup called me over, gave me water, asked if I needed help. I asked him if he'd ever heard of the dry place. He went quiet. Then he said, "You saw it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He gave me a ride back into town but wouldn't say another word the whole drive. I've tried looking it up. There's no map. No records. Nothing. But sometimes, when I wake up too early, or when the house gets too quiet, I hear it. Not loud. Just a soft shuffle. Footsteps circling. And the faint hiss of breath rising from somewhere below. I bought the hourglass at a roadside stall outside Quartzsite. The old woman running the table barely looked up from her folding chair. Everything she sold was coated in a fine dust, agate beads, glass bottles, bleached animal bones. The hourglass was different. Clean. Heavy. Sealed in a brass frame. How much? I asked. She didn't answer at first. Just stared at me with eyes that looked scratched. Not cloudy, but damaged, like mirrors dragged through sand. Then she said, "Don't flip it unless you want to stay." I smiled politely and handed her a 20. No change was offered. Later that day, I parked my truck at an off-grid site I'd found online. An old prospector's camp, supposedly haunted, definitely forgotten. It was 30 miles from the nearest anything, down a path of shredded asphalt, and eventually, just dust. Perfect for my solo getaway. No signal, no noise, just time to think. I pitched my tent next to the rusted remains of what might have once been a trailer. The silence was absolute. No bugs. No birds. Just the crunch of my boots and the faint echo of it dying in the heat. Around dusk, I unpacked the hourglass. It was smooth, cold. The sand inside wasn't sand, it looked like powdered glass. Sharp and fine. When I flipped it, the grains moved slower than any hourglass I'd seen. Almost reluctant. As if falling was a choice they had to make. I timed it. Nearly an hour before it emptied. That night, I kept it beside my sleeping bag, staring at it as the last few grains slid through. I wasn't sure why it made me anxious. I told myself it was just a trinket, a weird souvenir from a half-mad woman with a sunburnt nose and a vacant stare. The wind picked up around midnight. The tent shivered. I zipped my sleeping bag and turned on a small lantern, reaching for the hourglass out of reflex. It was full again. All the sand, every grain, was back in the top bulb. I hadn't flipped it. I sat up fast, almost knocking the lantern over. The wind howled louder outside, but the hourglass didn't so much as tremble. It stood upright on the hard ground beside me, full of that sparkling, vicious dust. I checked my phone. No signal. No GPS. Just 12:02 a.m. and a flickering battery icon. Then I heard the whisper. Soft at first. Like someone muttering behind fabric. I killed the lantern. The tent wasn't dark. Not completely. There was a glow, a faint blue shimmer, coming from the hourglass. Like the grains themselves were lit from within. The whispering got louder. It wasn't a voice. Not exactly. It was more like 1,000 mouths breathing words they couldn't quite form. The syllables tumbled together, glassy and wrong. I wanted to run. But I didn't move. The hourglass began to tip. Slowly. Like it was being pushed from behind. But nothing was there. I tried to stop it, but my arm wouldn't move. My whole body felt underwater. The glass turned. The first grain dropped. And something outside took a step closer. Each grain that fell was a second I couldn't move. Not blink, not breathe. The paralysis wasn't just physical, it was temporal. I felt it deep in my chest, like my heartbeat was sinking with the hourglass. Slow. Slower. Slowed. Outside, the footsteps circled my tent. They didn't sound human. They were too light to be boots, too uneven to be paws. Just soft impacts. Like someone walking barefoot in deliberate arcs. Once around. Then again. And again. Spiraling closer. I could hear the grains falling. One after another, echoing too loud inside that tiny space. Like time was being counted down, but not my time. Finally, I could move. A finger. Then a hand. I lunged for the hourglass and grabbed it mid-fall, spilling a few grains but stopping the cycle. The whispering stopped. The steps froze. For a long time, there was silence. Then a single sound, something brushing against the outside of my tent. Not scratching. Not tapping. Smoothing, like a hand tracing the canvas in long, slow lines. I gripped the hourglass tight, the cold brass biting into my palm. After several minutes, I heard it retreat. No rustling. No footsteps. Just less presence. Like whatever had been there decided it was finished. I stayed awake until morning. When the sun rose, I finally stepped outside. The desert looked the same, sun-bleached, cracked still, But around my tent was a perfect circle of disturbed sand, as if something had paced in ritual. And more disturbing, my truck was gone. Not broken into. Gone. No tracks. No dents. No tire prints. Just a flat horizon where it had once sat. I took the hourglass and started walking. By noon, I was sunblind and disoriented. I had no water left. I knew, logically, the access road had to be east. But the landscape didn't match what I'd seen on the way in. The hills were shaped wrong. The sky too pale. Worse, the sun wasn't moving. I checked my watch. 12:46. I waited an hour. Still 12:46. The light didn't change. The shadows didn't shift. I flipped the hourglass out of panic. As soon as the first grain fell, the shadows moved. Fast. Too fast. Like time trying to catch up with itself. The sun dropped toward the horizon in a blur, and darkness fell instantly. Cold air rushed over me. Stars screamed into view. And just behind me, I heard it breathing again. Not close. But not far. I ran. Tripped. Crawled. Cried. No idea how long I moved. Until eventually, I found the edge of a paved road. Lights in the distance. A small truck stop, flickering neon and a vending machine half buried in sand. Civilization. Somehow. Inside, a man behind the counter looked up at me, didn't blink, and said, "You flipped it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. He pointed to a dusty shelf behind the register. There were 5 other hourglasses, each slightly different. Each filled with the same powdered, glinting dust. "No one listens," he said. "They always flip it." I left the hourglass there. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would keep me safe. But every night since, at exactly 12:46, the second hand on my watch stutters. And sometimes, when it's really quiet, I swear I can hear the faint patter of footsteps outside. Circling. We weren't supposed to go near the tower. That's what Liam told me, anyway, as we set up our tents beneath a ridge maybe 30 miles outside Death Valley. He pointed at it just after sunset, a rusted steel thing poking out of the landscape like a broken antenna. I hadn't noticed it during the day, but now that it caught the last of the light, it looked impossibly tall. Wrongly tall. I asked what kind of tower it was. Radio. Used to be for search and rescue. Long dead now. He didn't say more, but his voice changed. I've known Liam since college. He never shuts up. But that night, after the tower came up, he got quiet. It was supposed to be a photo trip. Just us, old friends, expensive gear, and endless sandscapes. But the silence out here felt like it had weight. Like it was watching you back. Around midnight while Liam slept, I couldn't stop thinking about the tower. Something about it bothered me. Not just the shape, too narrow, too skeletal, but the way it pointed. It didn't seem aimed at the sky. It seemed aimed down. Into the ground. I know that doesn't make sense. But I felt it. A lean. A direction. At 1:12 a.m., my radio flickered on. We brought shortwave units just in case, little walkie-talkies with laughable range. I kept mine off. But now it crackled, then popped, and then hissed with static. I grabbed it, confused, then heard it. A voice. Not clear. Just a few scattered words. Cut up. Misplaced. Shadow, beneath, can't leave, help, listen. Then silence. I looked toward the tower. A red light blinked once. Then again. I woke Liam. Told him what I heard. He looked more annoyed than scared. You turned yours on, didn't you? I didn't. He didn't believe me. But I could tell something about the transmission bothered him. The tower's been dead since the 90s, he said. They used to relay helicopter traffic through it. Locals said it picked up weird stuff. What kind of weird? He didn't answer. I didn't sleep. I watched the tower. The red light blinked at irregular intervals. Sometimes minutes between. Sometimes just seconds. No pattern. Right before dawn, my walkie hissed again. Just one word this time. It sounded like my name. At sunrise, Liam was already packing. He didn't say anything about the tower. Just zipped his tent fast and tight, like he was sealing something inside. I told him what I heard, my name, through the static. His face didn't change, but his hands moved faster. "I'm not staying another night," he said. We argued. I told him we'd driven hours into the desert for this trip. That I needed a few more shots. That whatever was coming through the radio was probably atmospheric interference. "You want to think that," he said, "because the alternative gets under your skin." He left before noon, kicking up a cloud behind his Jeep. I stayed. Because I'm stupid. Because I've always needed to see the thing I'm afraid of. I spent the day wandering the dunes, camera slung over my shoulder. But the pictures didn't look right. Every image of the tower was warped, leaning, shadowed, blurry. I tried a new lens. Same result. And in every photo, there was something else. A distortion in the lower corner. A smear of shape that I couldn't focus on. Almost human, almost crawling. That night, I camped alone. No stars. Just the tower, silhouetted against a bruised sky, its red light blinking faster now. Almost frantic. Almost alive. The walkie came alive again. But this time, it wasn't just my name. It was my voice. "Come closer," it said. Soft. Clear. Like I was talking to myself from the other side of the static. "Come see." I don't remember grabbing the flashlight. I don't remember walking. Just that I was suddenly there, standing at the base of the tower. Up close, it looked wrong, assembled out of mismatched steel, too tall for the support structure. It had no door, no wires. Just a rusted hatch, halfway buried. The red light flickered, then stopped. Total dark. I turned to go, and then I heard it. Under the sand. A slow, dragging scrape. I pointed the light at the ground. The sand was shifting. Moving in ripples, like something massive was turning just below the surface. The walkie buzzed again. Louder this time. And then a scream. My scream. I ran. Didn't stop until I collapsed by my tent, lungs bleeding air, the static still screaming in my hand. It kept going all night. In the morning, the tower was gone. No silhouette. No blinking light. Just a blank spot on the horizon. I hiked out. No signal. No Liam. Eventually I hit the road and flagged down a trucker. He didn't ask questions. Didn't even seem surprised to see me. When I mentioned the tower, he went quiet. "You heard it, didn't you?" I nodded. "They say it moves," he said. "Never stays in one place. Only calls to certain people." "Why?" He didn't answer. Just stared ahead, like the question was too big to answer out loud. Back home, I tried to play the recordings from my camera. Every audio file was corrupted. Every image of the tower? Gone. Except one. It wasn't the tower. It was the desert. My tent. And me. But in the background, blurry, nearly invisible, was a shape climbing out of the sand. No eyes. No face. Holding a walkie. To its mouth. I should have known something was off when I found the fire still warm. I'd been hiking for hours, just me, my pack, and the flat horizon. I was aiming for an old petroglyph site a few miles past an abandoned service road, but I'd miscalculated my timing. Sun was going down fast, and the desert doesn't forgive mistakes after dark. So when I spotted the outline of a camp, a few tents nestled between low rock outcrops, I headed straight for it. It was deserted but recent. Fire still smoldering. Gear packed neatly outside the tents. A half-empty water jug. Fresh footprints in the dust. I called out. Nothing. 3 tents, no people. I walked around, hesitated at the largest one, and unzipped the flap. Empty. Neatly rolled sleeping bag, clothes stacked like someone had just stepped out for a second. But the strangest part? Everything looked duplicated. 2 of everything. 2 toothbrushes. 2 flashlights. 2 journals. Like it was a mirrored setup. I checked the other tents. Same thing. Identical gear, mirrored layouts. Even the footprints, they moved in perfect loops, circling the site. No path leading in or out. Still, I was tired. I told myself the campers had gone for a walk. Maybe left before I arrived. Maybe I just didn't hear them. I set up a short distance away and tried not to think too hard. After dark, I made a fire. That's when the whispering started. It wasn't close. It came from the tents. Faint murmurs, like conversation through walls. I thought maybe they'd returned, but the camp was still empty. The firelight didn't reveal any movement. I called out again. No answer. Then I saw something in the nearest tent. A silhouette. Sitting upright. I stood slowly. The shape didn't move. Just sat there, motionless, backlit by the flicker of my flames. I stepped closer. Hey! I called. You alright in there? No response. Just as I reached the tent, the silhouette turned its head, snapping, fast, and vanished. Not ducking. Not hiding. Just gone. I unzipped the tent. Empty. The sleeping bag hadn't moved. Still perfectly made. I backed away, blood pounding in my ears. Then the fire behind me crackled louder, like something big had just stepped into the ring of light. I spun. Nothing. But the fire wasn't right anymore. The logs were arranged differently. I knew because I had laid them myself, and now one of the larger branches was missing. As if someone had lifted it out silently. That's when I noticed the sound. Breathing. Right behind me. I didn't turn around. Not at first. The breathing was too steady, too deliberate, like it wanted me to hear it. Heavy but slow, like someone trying not to pant. The firelight cast my shadow out long across the sand. But there was another one. Just behind mine. Unmoving. I turned. No one. Just the empty night. No wind. No sound. The fire flickered erratically, like it couldn't decide which way to lean. I stepped back toward my tent, but something stopped me. My pack was gone. I'd left it beside my tent, my only light, my water, my phone, everything. But now the tent flap was open, and inside, the sleeping bag had been unzipped. The pack was nowhere in sight. I tried calling out again. Just to say anything. A name, a question. But my voice felt thin in the air, swallowed before it could travel. Then I saw them. 3 figures standing just at the edge of the dark, beyond the ring of firelight. Not moving. Not speaking. They weren't facing me. They were all turned toward the empty tents. Heads tilted slightly, as if listening. I backed up. Slowly. Sand crunching underfoot like glass. My flashlight was still on the ground near the fire. I lunged for it, clicked it on, and aimed it at the figures. They were gone. No footsteps. No disturbance in the sand. Just void. I shined the light toward the tents again. Now, every flap was open. And inside each one was a person sitting upright. Motionless. As if waiting. Their features were obscured by shadow, but I could see their shapes, identical in posture, head angle, arm position. 3 perfect matches. Then, at once, they turned to look at me. That's when I ran. Not toward the ridge. Not toward the road. Just away. My legs moved without direction, arms pumping like I could outpace something that didn't breathe, didn't walk. Eventually, I stopped. Couldn't say how far I'd gone. The moon was higher now, casting enough light to see my own hands shaking. I dropped the flashlight. It hit something solid. Not a rock. A tent stake. I froze. Right in front of me, barely visible in the moonlight, was a 4th tent. Just like the others. Same brand. Same color. Neatly zipped. I turned. And saw the camp again. The same fire. Same rocks. Same 3 tents. I'd run in a circle. Or something had moved the circle around me. I sat down. There was nothing else to do. I didn't know which way was out, and part of me was afraid there wasn't an out anymore. I kept the flashlight pointed at the tents. But somewhere between one blink and the next, they were all zipped shut again. And the fourth tent, the one I'd nearly tripped over, was now open. Inside was my pack. Sitting upright. Clean. Untouched. And something else. A notebook I didn't own. I picked it up. No cover. Just page after page of handwriting that matched mine. Each page was a date, followed by a note. Camp is here again. Still no way out. They're not watching now. Figures circled the fire last night. Heard myself laughing. Thought I was out. Walked 20 miles. Came back to this. Hundreds of entries. The last one was dated tomorrow. And it just said, "You'll write this one too,